Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Catalyze event. Please bear with us a few moments as we allow attendees to get connected to audio, but we will be getting started momentarily. Thank you. Okay, I think we'll get started, everyone. Once again, welcome to today's Catalyze seminar session, Beyond the Science, Entrepreneurial Support and Commercialization Resources. My name is Patrick with RTI, and I'll be helping out with the virtual room today. Just note when you log in, your microphone and web camera are muted. If you have any questions for presenters today, please submit those into the Q&A window. Or you can also click the raise hand button to let us know you'd like to unmute and ask your question verbally. If you happen to run into any issues with Zoom, reach out to me in the chat window. Towards the end of today's session, we will have a brief evaluation poll, so please do take a moment to provide your feedback at that time. So Marissa, I will turn the session over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you all for kicking off your week with us. If you've been following our seminar series for a while now, you'll recall that we've had several speakers with us from NHLBI's Office of Translational Alliances and Coordination, or OTAC. Today, we will hear from OTAC's director, Dr. Kathleen Rousche, and NHLBI's Small Business Coordinator, Dr. Stephanie Davis, who will share about OTAC's role in the translation of discoveries from bench to bedside and the resources and services available to entrepreneurs that OTAC offers. So before diving into the presentation, I would like to take a minute and introduce today's speakers, our first being OTAC's director, Dr. Kathleen Rousche. Kathleen, as you might imagine, wears many hats within OTAC, but her primary duties include overseeing 2 translational science programs, which are the NCAI and REACH programs, which, much like Catalyze, are designed to accelerate the translation of new discoveries into innovative biomedical products to prevent, diagnose, and treat heart, lung, and blood disorders. Prior to joining NIH, Kathleen held many positions in industry, academia, and medical communications, spanning multiple topics. And I am also very pleased to introduce Dr. Stephanie Davis, who is the Small Business Program Coordinator for NHLBI's SBIR and STTR programs, which are both run out of OTAC. Dr. Davis completed her education in pharmacology. She completed a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Kentucky in neurology. And in addition to her postdoc, Dr. Davis also interned with the Office of Technology Commercialization at the University of Kentucky. And before joining NHLBI OTAC, Dr. Davis served as a program manager, in the National Institute on Aging Office of Small Business Research. So with that, Kathleen and Stephanie, I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marissa. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for inviting us to be here today. I'm Kathleen Rousche. I oversee the Innovation and Commercialization Office at the NHLBI, and Steph and I are here today to talk about our office, the programs we support, and services we provide. We are a resource for innovators in our scientific community whose work targets the NHLBI mission. Next slide, please. So the mission of the NHLBI is to turn discovery into health by providing leadership in training, research, and education to prevent and treat heart, lung, blood, and sleep diseases. There's 4 major goals in the NHLBI strategic vision. We support all of them, but we have a special focus on the 2 goals on the right, which are advancing translational research. And in doing so, we also develop the workforce. Next slide, please. This slide shows our office mission and vision. We really exist to help move technologies forward quickly into products and services, and we envision having a community of innovators that are well-versed in technology development and commercialization processes so they understand how to advance technologies to improve patients' lives. The 4 goals are listed. We want to identify unmet needs in our space, improve diversity in our programs, lead training and education programs, and really see a return on the investments we make in our funded technologies as measured by positive impacts on health. Next slide. This slide is an overview of the programs and services that we affect. We help both academic and small business innovators. and we offer funding through various programs that support early stage technology development. We manage or help serve proof of concept programs, including Catalyze, the NCI and REACH Academic Proof of Concept Centers, and the CAP Point of Care program. We work across NHLBI to coordinate the federal small business programs and supplemental programs that are available to small business awardees, such as those targeting diversity and commercialization. Importantly, what our office does then is complement the funding we give with tailored product development support and entrepreneurial education, so innovators understand how to navigate that pathway from discovery to product. Our goals with the projects we fund is to keep them moving along the pipeline during the federal period of support and beyond to improve the chances of success. We're here to offer advice prior to applying, during the project period, and then we also play a role in helping our innovators make connections to expand their networks to find non-federal development partners. Our team offers one-on-one advisory services. We offer partnering and investment opportunities for our companies, as well as pitch coaching. Outside of our office staff, we have an extensive mentor network. This is made up of folks with product development expertise that volunteer their time to provide our funded companies free advice in different specialty areas. Next slide, please. One of the ways that we can offer this very tailored support is because we staff the office with unique advisors that have experience in areas that are really critical for technologies to reach the market. But these areas are sometimes those where innovators have limited training or expertise. Our staff has expertise in intellectual property, regulatory, health economics and reimbursement, finding investment, and clinical trial design. And this team is really critical in helping our innovators understand early what they need to consider during development to advance their technologies. So at this point, I would like to, well, Marissa gave a nice introduction, but Stephanie Davis, my colleague, the small business coordinator, Steph's going to go into more detail about the programs I touched on and services we offer. And she's going to start with the small business program. Steph?
Thank you so much, Kathleen. So good afternoon or morning for some of you. So as Marissa and Kathleen mentioned, my name is Stephanie Davis, and I am currently the Small Business Program Coordinator at the NHLBI. So some of you might be familiar with the small business grant programs, but if you're not, I wanted to just provide a really brief introduction. So federal agencies that conduct research and development or fund research and development are required to participate in what is known as the small business grant programs. So there are two components to the small business grant programs. The first is the capstone program, which is the Small Business Innovation Research or SBIR program. And the SBIR program funds small business concerns who are engaging in R&D that aligns with the mission of a federal agency. And the products or services that are being developed by these small businesses need to have a potential for commercialization. So all federal agencies that have an extramural research and development budget over $100 million are required to participate in the SBIR program. And in FY21, that meant that 3.2% of NIH's extramural budget went to SBIR awards and grants. The other program, which is very, very similar to the SBIR program, with just a few minor differences, is the Small Business Technology Transfer Program. So this is a program that is virtually identical to the SBIR program with one caveat. That is, it is required to facilitate collaborations between small business concerns and nonprofit US-based research institutions. And so all federal agencies that have extramural R&D budgets greater than 1 billion are required to participate in the STTR program. And last year in FY21, the about 0.45% of our extramural funds went to fund STTR awards. So this pie chart just shows the overall breakdown of the NIH's small business budget, which includes both money for SBIR and STTR grants. So as you can see, the NHLBI is the fourth largest small business program across the NIH. And last year, our budget to fund the small business program was about $120 million. So who is eligible for a small business grant, whether that's an SBIR or an STTR grant? So the first requirement is that it has to be an organized for-profit US-based small business concern. And when we say small business, we're using the Small Business Administration definition, which means 500 or fewer employees. although I should note that most of our businesses that we fund have far fewer than 500 employees. All work must be done in the US with a few exceptions, and those are generally accepted on a case-by-case basis. Additionally, the small business concern must be at least 50% US owned and operated by individuals in the US, or if that small business concern is owned by another business, that business owning the small business concern must be at least 50% owned and operated by individuals in the US. And this is only an eligibility criterion for small business for SBIR awardees, but if the SBIR awardee is owned by multiple venture capital firms, this is allowed so long as one firm does not own more than 50% of the company. So these days, the small business grant submission process is done entirely online. And so here are just kind of the list of the required registrations that are needed in order to submit a grant. I should note very quickly that the DUNS number is actually going away and it's being replaced by the unique entity identifier or unique identifier entity. It's one of those two. Their number, the UI, I will put that in the chat which one it is, but basically the DUNS number is going away. So, but just keep in mind that these registrations do take several weeks to complete. And if you are planning on submitting a grant, I really recommend you get started on all of these registrations well in advance of the submission deadline. So what are the advantages to seeking small business grant funding? So a lot of people don't know this, but the NIH provides seed funding for innovative technological development in the life sciences field. So we are actually one of the biggest investors in early stage life sciences based technologies. We are willing to invest in those technologies that are too risky for venture capitals, firms, or angel investors. SBIR and STTR grants do not require repayment, so this is not a loan and it's non-dilutive, which means it's not going to affect the prices of your stocks or your shares. The SBIR STTR programs also allow the small business to retain IP rights. It provides your business with recognition, verification, and visibility. So basically, if you're able to obtain grant funding from the NIH, this can provide leverage to attract other funding and collaboration, AKA venture capital firms, angel investors, or other strategic partners. And if you look at this slide right here, this shows the stages of development that the SBIR programs fund. So while we usually don't fund basic research and discovery, we fund everything all the way from proof of concept studies to scaled up research and development and all the way up to scale up in manufacturing. And the goal of the SBIR STTR program is to de-risk technologies enough so that they can go find other sources of funding and be independent from us as they reach commercialization. So I mentioned before that the SBIR and STTR program are very, very similar with a few select differences. So this table shows the differences between those programs. For SBIR grants, it is allowed for a small business concern to partner with an academic institution, but it is not required. Furthermore, the PI for an SBIR grant must be primarily employed with the small business at the time of the award. And this is a pretty non-negotiable requirement. So if you are going to be the PI on an application and you are concerned that you do not have either yourself or another PI who can meet that requirement, you will probably have to submit an STTR award. Likewise, there are some guidelines for the amount of the budget and the work that can be outsourced with an SBIR award. Generally speaking, there is a maximum of 33% that can be outsourced with a phase 1 award and up to 50% with a phase 2 award. Although sometimes these requirements are flexible on a case-by-case basis. Now at STTR awards, it is required that the small business concern partners with a nonprofit research institution. So while it's allowed with an SBIR, STTRs require this partnership. For an STTR award, the PI can either be employed by the research institution partner or the small business concern. So one or the other. So for a lot of academics who don't want to give up their primary employment, an STTR is a very attractive option. The key is that they need to devote at least 1.2 calendar months or 10% effort on the project. For STTRs, there is a set in stone requirement for 40% of the budget / work to go to the small business concern, and at least 30% needs to go to the research institution. These are written into the congressional mandate, so unfortunately, there is no waivers for these requirements. So as I mentioned before, the small business program is designed to fund everything from early stage proof of concept all the way up until the beginning stages of scale up and manufacturing. So small business grants are given out in different phases, and these phases differ in their budget size and their project period, and they are designed to fund different stages of the product development cycle. So as you can see, if you look at the phase one, this is going to be the initial stage where you're funding your feasibility or proof of concept work. And these studies usually last anywhere from 6 months to a year. For phase two awards, these are going to be funding the larger, more developed R&D project. And so these awards are usually around 2 to 3 years, and the budgets are much larger than phase one. There are some alternative options to the standard phase one, phase two grants. There are what's known as fast track awards, which I refer to as the 2-for-1 special of small business awards. So basically what you do with a fast track is if you're a little bit further along with a project and you also have a more mature commercialization strategy, you might be an attractive candidate for a fast track award. So with this, you basically apply for both the phase one and the phase two at the same time. And this does carry an advantage in that once you finish the phase one, if you successfully meet your milestones, you don't have to apply for the phase two. You can just transition onto the phase two portion. And likewise, for SBIR awardees only, there is a direct to phase two option. And this basically is for companies that have already done their equivalent of phase one studies and would like to bypass that and go directly to the phase two. So there are some additional later stage awards for companies that are past the phase two or in the current phase two. One of which are the competing renewal phase 2B awards, which I will be going over those in a later slide. These are basically additional awards that go to companies that still need to meet their regulatory and commercial milestones and provide up to $3 million over a 3-year period. And then there are the Commercialization Readiness Pilot Program awards. And so small caveat, the NHLBI only provides up to $500,000 over 2 years. But these awards are designed to be either given in conjunction with a current phase 2 or phase 2B award or immediately after those awards. And these are designed to fund activities that are normally not funded through the small business parent awards. And finally, the phase 3 is not something that the NHLBI or the NIH currently supports. Other federal agencies such as the DoD will fund phase 3 awards in which they will act as the buyer, but for the NIH, we don't have that. What we mean when we say a company's in the phase 3 is that they are obtaining external sources of funding and they are no longer dependent upon SBIR or STTR grants. So this diagram here shows all of the steps that need to happen from the time that you submit an award until the time that it is funded. And so I'm not going to go over these in a lot of detail, but what you do need to know is that when you submit a grant to the NIH, it is going to go to the Center for Scientific Review, and it's going to be assigned to both a primary and secondary institute. So for example, if your grant application focuses on a heart, lung, blood, or sleep disorder, it's most likely going to be assigned to us, as well as a study section, which is going to consist of individuals with scientific and business expertise that is relevant to your technology. So your application is going to be reviewed by the study section, and once it's done, it's going to be assigned a priority score. So priority scores are something that the lower it is, the better. So a perfect priority score is a 10. But for your application, when you get your priority score and your summary statement back, what you're going to do is you're going to go over it with your program officer, and usually they should be able to give you a general idea of whether or not it will be considered for funding. So all of these applications that are within the pay line in the case of phase 1 SBIRs, and within the zone of consideration in the case of all other small business awards, they will go to the NHLBI Advisory Council for ultimate approval for funding. After council, the program and grants management staff will help prepare the funding lists. And then before those notices of awards go out, you will be contacted by your grants management specialist for something called just in time. And basically what that means is they're going to be gathering all the additional documentation and information needed in order to put out that notice of award. But the important thing to remember is that there are a lot of steps between when you submit an application and when the notice of award goes out. And this can be anywhere from a 7-month to a 9-month delay. And sometimes there needs to be additional time allowed for a potential resubmission if the grant does not score well enough the first time around. So this right here actually shows the different due dates and when the review meetings for grants that came in on those due dates will occur, as well as when the advisory council will happen, and then the earliest project start date. So as you all can see, there is about a 6-month delay between the January and due date and the July start date. But if you, for example, submit in April, there's actually an 8-month delay. So it is important to plan ahead and just keep in mind that when you submit your application, it is going to be at least 6 months before your project can start. So as our name would suggest, we are the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. So it probably shouldn't be very surprising that we're interested in funding commercially promising products that are meant to treat, diagnose, and facilitate research in heart, lung, blood, and sleep-related diseases. With a minor caveat, if it is a lung or blood cancer, you will probably be more of interest to our colleagues at the National Cancer Institute. But any non-cancerous conditions that are related to heart, lung, blood, or sleep health are things that are within our mission. So as I mentioned before, our approximate small business budget is $120 million, which funds about 312 active projects. This pie chart just shows an approximate breakdown of the types of technologies that our small business program funds. So as you can see, we fund a lot of different types of technologies. About 35% of our portfolio goes to therapeutics, which include biologics, small molecules, tissue therapeutics, gene therapies, etc. But we are also a pretty device-heavy institute. So we have about 30% of our portfolio is for supportive or therapeutic devices. About 8% goes to in vitro diagnostics and research tools each. And then the remaining part of our portfolio goes to monitoring or diagnostic devices, health IT and digital health, software type technologies, as well as imaging devices. But keep in mind this breakdown does differ based on the year because we are always receiving many different types of investigator initiated applications, and our technology breakdown will vary from year to year. So this just provides a general overview of some of the conditions that we are interested in at the NHLBI. So please note that just because it's not on here doesn't mean we're not interested, but just this is just demonstrating that the types of conditions that we are focused on are going to be cardiovascular diseases and non-oncologic lung and blood disorders. Furthermore, we're also very focused on sleep health. A lot of people don't know that, but we are the primary institute that focuses on sleep and circadian biology at the NIH. So a lot of questions that I have relate to the budget of small business grants. So one thing that is important to remember is that small business grants have budget caps. So across federal agencies, the budget cap for a phase 1 grant is about $150,000 for a 6 to 12 month long project. And for phase 2, it's about $1 million for a 2-year long project. However, the NIH does have higher hard caps that have been negotiated by the Small Business Administration because medical research is expensive. And furthermore, there are certain topics where we know that these studies are, tend to generate larger budgets. So if you have a topic that falls under one of our SBA approved budget waiver topics, you are allowed to request more than the $275K for phase 1 or $1.83 million for phase 2. And so we'll be sending out a slide deck later after this webinar, but if you are interested to see whether or not your project falls under one of those waiver topics, I've included a link to that list in this slide. Another difference between small business grants and other types of grants is that they are defined by total costs, not direct costs. So that is something that is a little bit unusual to people who are more familiar with R01s and R21s. So you do want to make sure that you check the budget allowance in each funding opportunity announcement to make sure you're staying within that total cost allowance. Furthermore, small business grantees are allowed to request up to 7% of their total costs for a fee. So the fee is basically your company profit, and it can be used for pretty much whatever you want. So make sure you request your fee at the time of application. And finally, another question I have is whether or not fee-for-service or CRO type vendors are counted as small business costs. Namely, do they count towards the subcontracting maximum that is permitted for SBIR and STTR awards? This does vary by institute, but generally speaking, NHLBI does allow fee-for-service providers to count as small business costs. And this is important because a lot of early stage companies don't have their own equipment. And we understand that when you're just getting started, it's easier to often rely on CROs who have that equipment in-house. But if you have any questions about whether or not something would be considered a fee-for-service activity versus a collaboration, please contact us and we can help figure that out. Another thing that is also recommended that you request at the time of application, besides your fee, is your allowance for technical and business assistance. So the Small Business Administration allows companies who are applying for small business grant awards to request a certain amount of money that is specifically for activities that are important for commercial development, but are not considered R&D. So I have included kind of a list of activities that fall under the technical and business assistance umbrella on the right side of the slide. So these include anything from market research, IP related costs, development of manufacturing or regulatory plans, access to databases. So phase 1 awardees can request up to $6,500 for technical and business assistance, while phase 2 awardees can request up to $50,000 for technical and business assistance. Now, it is recommended that you request these costs at the time of the application. However, at this time, if you did not request TABA at the time of your application, if you're a phase 1 awardee, we do allow companies to request those funds through an administrative supplement. Furthermore, people who did not request TABA funds are also eligible to participate in the NIH TABA Needs Assessment Program and consulting programs. So these are centralized TABA programs that are administered by the main NIH seat office, which oversees the entire small business program. So most of our applications that we receive for small business grants come in through one of these 4 funding opportunity announcements called the Omnibus FOAs. So Omnibus is a fancy word that means basically we accept everything, and all institutes that participate in the small business program participate in at least 2 of these Omnibus announcements. So the applications that we receive through these are all investigator initiated, means they are not focused on a particular topic or technology type. They just, if it comes in through one of these funding opportunities and it is within our mission space, then we are interested in considering it for funding. So we have 2 funding opportunities each, 2 for SBIR and 2 for STTR. And for each of those, one allows clinical trials and one does not. So we also participate in some targeted funding opportunity announcements that are focused specifically on a certain technology type or scientific area. So some of these that we participate in include the Innovations for Healthy Living RFA, which is run by the National Institute for Minority Health and Health Disparities. So this specifically funds the development of devices, diagnostics, and other technologies to address health disparities in heart, lung, blood, and sleep health. So right now, the next due date for this is TBA, but we will be sending this out in our newsletter and on our social media once we have the next due date for this program. Additionally, we also participate in the HEAL Initiative funding opportunity announcements that are focused on the development of non-addictive therapies and technologies addressed at pain management. So we are interested in these specifically in the context of heart, lung, blood, and sleep disorders. Furthermore, we also participate in a notice of special interest that is focusing on the development of technologies for improving maternal health outcomes. So we are looking specifically for tools, technologies, and devices addressing heart, lung, blood, and sleep-related complications of pregnancy. And so this NOCI is attached to the regular Omnibus funding opportunity announcements. So you can apply through this for any of the Omnibus due dates. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we also offer 2 different types of late-stage grant opportunities for companies that are either current or past phase 2 awardees. So these include the Commercialization Readiness Pilot Program and both the phase 2B programs. So the phase 2B programs consist of our Bridge Award, which covers pretty much any technology in our mission space, and Small Market Awards. And Small Market is specifically geared towards technologies that have an orphan indication are geared towards a rare disease or are meant for pediatric patients. So this Venn diagram just shows the difference between the phase 2B program and the CRP program. But in summary, the CRP program follows the standard due dates. It provides companies that either have a current or past phase 2 or phase 2B award with $500,000 over 2 years to provide funding for activities that are not normally covered under the small business program, parent awards. And the phase 2B programs, they are accepted at only one receipt date per year. So for the current iteration of these small market awards, the due date is February 28th. It does require or strongly encourage matching funds for those awards, a 1-to-1 match for the Bridge Award and a 1-to-3 match for the Small Market Award. And this provides up to $3 million over 3 years. So that being said, there are some similarities. So both of these award mechanisms only allow 2 submissions per parent grant, and it both supports late stage R&D activities that are permitted to bridge the gap between the phase 2 project and full commercialization. So for current phase 1 awardees, there is a great program that the NCI helps run and that we participate in called the Innovation Corps or I-Corps at NIH. So this is a program that is heavily modeled after the NSF I-Corps program that was launched in 2014 based on lean startup methodologies. So this is a program that requires participants to conduct about 100 interviews over an 8-week period. That the purpose of these interviews is to help them determine whether or not they have the correct business plan. And it helps refine their proposed model and make sure that they're actually developing something that people want to buy. The whole idea is this is not going to be a commercially successful product if nobody wants it. So this is open, as I said, to current phase 1 and to fast track awardees who are in the phase 1 portion of their grant. There are 2 receipt dates per year, and the next due date is November 15th of 2022. And this program provides up to $55,000 for the course registration and travel expenses for a team of 3 to participate and improve their customer discovery experience. Another program that is actually open to Catalyze awardees as well as small business awardees is called the Concept to Clinic Commercializing Innovation Program, or the C3I program. And this is a program that's designed for current medical device innovators with the tools and knowledge needed to commercialize their technologies. So right now we are currently accepting applications for the C3I Validation Execution Program, and this provides 24 weeks of entrepreneurial training. And as I mentioned, while it is primarily geared towards small business awardees, Catalyze awardees are allowed to apply for this program. So if you are interested in applying for C3I and you're using your Catalyze award to develop a medical device, please feel free to reach out to us because this is a really fantastic program that is run by our colleagues at the National Institute for Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering. If you're a current phase 1 or phase 2 small business grantee and you're looking to specifically hire promising new talent for your company, one program that I really encourage people to take advantage of are the administrative supplements to promote diversity, or the diversity supplement program for small business awardees. So this is a program that provides current grantees with additional financial support to fund the salary and travel and supplies for an early career scientist who is from, for the specific purpose of promoting diversity within the SBIR and STTR supported workforce. So this program allows these early career candidates to receive a combination of scientific and entrepreneurial training, as well as hands-on experience in the biotech sector. One requirement is that in order to participate in this program, you do have to have an active SBIR or STTR award. So if you're a current Catalyze awardee and you would like to hire a candidate, there is another diversity supplement program for non-small business awardees. And also the candidate must be a US citizen or a permanent resident in order to be eligible. So this right here, shows the list of conferences that we were able to send our small business awardees to last year. So one of the things that is really important for us is to make sure that our companies that we're funding get the experience they need in being able to pitch their technology, interact with investors and strategic partners. So last year, we were able to send our companies to a total of 12 events. We pitch coached a total of 41 companies and registered 27 slots at these different showcases. And Kathleen mentioned our EIR team that we have here in OTAC. Well, these individuals are going to be the ones that are coaching companies for these events. Additionally, companies that are selected for these company showcase events get free registration. So while they do have to pay for travel in the case of in-person conferences and meetings, we do provide complimentary registration, which is really great, a really great opportunity for companies that are looking to make those connections. Another program that is great for people who have not previously received a small business award is the NIH Applicant Assistance Program, also known as the AAP. So this program, if you're selected for it, it will give you 10 weeks of free coaching that is designed to help new and inexperienced award applicants put together a strong phase 1 SBIR or STTR application. So currently, we've participated in this program for several years, and we are one of 10 institutes that are participating now. Additionally, I should mention that while anybody who has never received a small business award is eligible to apply for the AAP, we are specifically interested in applications from businesses that are owned and or led by women and historically underrepresented individuals. So there's actually a webinar for the AAP that is today at 2 p.m. But if you are interested in learning more about the AAP, I can drop the link in the chat, and you have about a month to apply for the next due date. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the AAP or connect you with my colleague who runs it. It's a really great program, especially if the submission process seems a little daunting for small business grants. And so, of course, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but Catalyze is the other program that our office oversees that specifically supports the development of translational technologies in the field of heart, lung, blood, and sleep disorders. So due to the everybody on this call, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but as you all probably know very well, Catalyze right now supports product definition activities for drugs, biologics, devices, diagnostics, and transformative platforms. So there are a lot of overlaps between the small business grant program and the Catalyze programs. So small businesses that are based in the US are eligible to apply for both. But one of the big differences between the two is that Catalyze does not support interaction with the FDA or clinical trials. So a lot of people who are interested in both opportunities, I encourage you to check out both, but if you're going to be conducting a clinical trial, then you will want to go through the small business program. And so obviously here are the current funding opportunities for Catalyze, and the next due date is July 21st. If you're looking for just some really great informational videos that talk about different aspects of regulatory strategies, commercialization, and intellectual property, I highly really suggest going to our YouTube playlist to look at our small business Hangouts. These are really great videos. They're easy to watch and they're well presented. One specific video that I recommend for people who are in the phase 1 is going to be this one, the writing your phase 1, phase 2 commercialization plan. So one thing that is required for people who are applying for either a fast track or a phase 2 award is they have to put together their commercialization strategy. And it's a really great video that just kind of shows what the reviewers and what NHLBI staff are going to be looking for. And so here's just a list of really great resources that I send to all of my applicants. These include everything from some resources to put together a commercialization plan, some sample applications from our colleagues at NCI, NIA, and NIAD. The SF424 application instructions is a must-have for anybody who's submitting an application. Just a process infographic, a list of the study sections. Also, NIH Reporter, for those who are unfamiliar, is a really great resource. And so it shows every NIH-funded active project that we are currently funding. So if you'd like to see whether or not you have any competition that we're currently funding, NIH Reporter is a great way to do that. And similarly, the Matchmaker tool under Reporter is what will really show you whether or not there are any similar projects to what you're developing. And so if you are not currently connected with us, we highly recommend staying up to date with the NIH Seed Office just to learn about more general small business updates. You go to listserv at list.nih.gov. You can subscribe to the SBIR STTR listserv. You can also follow NIH Seed at NIH Seed on Twitter. For us, if you have an inquiry, please feel free to submit a question to us via our small business inquiry form. I also recommend following us on Twitter because we put out a lot of updates and advertisements for new programs that might be of interest. These also go out in our small business newsletter. And finally, if you just have a general question for us or you want to reach myself or my colleagues, please email us at nhlbi_SBIR@mail.nih.gov. And I want to thank you all for your time, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. We do have a couple questions here. The first one, since there are a lot of resources through Catalyze and OTAC, how does a funded NHLBI awardee go about finding out more information?
Yes, that's a great question. So, one of the, as I mentioned in the last slide, one of the best ways to find out more information is to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletters. So we do have a Twitter account, which is NHLBI_SBIR. Although we don't have a LinkedIn page of our own, if you follow the NHLBI page on LinkedIn, we do post a lot of small business updates. Additionally, our newsletter is really great. So for example, if you are interested in participating in the applicant assistance program, our more recent issue that went out in April just put those due dates when the webinar was going out, when the Q&A session was going out. So I definitely recommend subscribing to those because that's going to be the best way to kind of come up with new, to get clued into when we're participating in certain programs. Also, please feel free to reach out to your program officers. A lot of them also hold small business grants, and they have colleagues who, work with me closely, so they can also give you that information.
Okay, we do have another question from Evan. When can you apply for a phase 2B? Do you need to have your phase 2 SBIR to be finished?
That's a good question. So in order to apply for your phase 2B, you do have to have at least an active phase 2 award that is going to be complete by the time the phase 2B project starts. So if you've already completed a phase 2 award or a fast track award, and let's say you're kind of at the tail end of that project, you are allowed to apply for the phase 2B, provided that your phase 1 or your phase 2 award closes out first. But if you only have a phase 1 award, for example, you can't jump directly to a phase 2B. It does have to be after the completion of a phase 2 or a fast track award.
Okay, one other question I see. What is the NIH Seed Office?
Yes, so the NIH Seed Office stands for the NIH Small Business Entrepreneurial Education and Development Office. So they are essentially the office that oversees all of the small business programs across the NIH. So we work with them very closely to do things such as send companies to investor showcases. We work with them to put on outreach and educational events. They also, they work with us very closely to administer programs such as I-Corps and the Diversity Supplement Program. So they are really great in that they serve all institutes. One thing that we are very fortunate to have at the NHLBI is, we have a lot of those same resources in-house, but SEED is there to provide those to any NIH grantee, not just NHLBI.
Okay, that's all the questions I see at the moment, but we do have several minutes before the top of the hour. So if there are any additional questions, you may type those into the Q&A. You can also ask your question verbally. Just click the raise hand button and we can unmute your line. And I do see another question did come in. Why does the C3I program focus only on devices?
That's a great question. So the reason why it focuses on devices is because it's the NIBIB's program and they almost exclusively fund devices. I have talked to my colleagues there and they say that technically the curriculum can be for non-device innovators, but because it's NIBIB, they wanted to keep the focus on devices.
Okay, we do have another question. For a non-funded application looking for support for product development and validation, would you recommend first applying to C3I, Catalyze, or both simultaneously?
That's a good question. So technically to participate in C3I, you have to have some sort of funded NIH grant. So that can be a Catalyze award, it can be an RO1, but it does have to be a funded application. So if you don't have any active awards, unfortunately, you cannot participate in the C3I program. In terms of applying to small business versus Catalyze, so that's a great question. So as you all probably know very well, Catalyze comes with a lot of really great resources and a suite of support services that the NIH small business programs do not come with. So, we don't have the coordinating centers like Catalyze does, which means that, for many of those services, small business awardees can get those, they can get funds for them through things like TABA, but they're kind of on their own. That being said, one of the advantages to the small business program is that there are a lot more small business awards that are given out every year. So since most of our applications come in through the Omnibus funding opportunity announcements, and they're kind of a less targeted funding opportunity, we give out more awards. So I would say in terms of the likelihood of getting funded, it does vary based on a year to year, but we do give out more small business awards. That being said, I highly, highly recommend applying to both if you are eligible for both. Just remember that when you do apply, if you have a similar application, you just don't want it to be under review at the same time.
Thank you, Stephanie. I don't see any other questions, but please feel free to submit any additional questions. While we wait to see if more questions come in, I'm going to go ahead and open the feedback survey. It's a brief 5-question poll, so please do take a minute to fill that out. And then also please note in the chat window, our panelists have been putting some links to resources. So please be sure to check those out as well.
And maybe just to jump in, so if you're an unfunded researcher interested in these resources or others, feel free to reach out to OTAC and the email that Steph provided, or the NHLBI program directly. And we work closely together and oftentimes refer investigators or interested researchers to each other just based on fit of the program versus what they're trying to accomplish in their studies. So just keep that in mind. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. I would also like to wrap this webinar up by providing a few upcoming events and reminders to you all. So 2 items I'd like to make you aware of for today. First, our May seminar will cover the pre-IND meeting and is scheduled for Wednesday, May 18th over the lunch hour. That seminar will be hosted by Dr. Carmela Moody, who is a Catalyze technical project lead here on the Catalyze Coordinating Center side, so from the RTI side. And finally, we now have a Catalyze distribution list live on the homepage of our website, where you can provide your email address and stay up to date on all Catalyze news, our upcoming events, and data and resource shares when we do those. So I'd like to ask one more time if there are any more questions for our wonderful presenters today. And if not, I will turn it back over to Patrick to close us out.
Great, thank you, Marissa. That concludes our webinar for today. I will leave the survey open for another 30 seconds to a minute to finish filling that out. So thank you everyone for attending and have a good afternoon. Bye everyone.